It began with a tweet. Not a grand speech, not a carefully drafted press release, but a short, sharp quip shared to millions in the span of seconds. On a humid Monday evening, just hours after the headlines broke that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had inked a fresh deal with Netflix, Piers Morgan's voice, never one to pass quietly, cut through the digital noise like a blade. The words weren't even his, but his decision to share them carried the weight of his own tone. Borrowing from the satirical account of Have I Got News for You, the jab landed with surgical precision. Netflix have signed a new deal that gives them first refusal on Harry and Meghan's show ideas, frustrating rival streamers who wanted to have the rights to say no first. It was humor, sure, but humor laced with derision, the sort that invites both laughter and a sting. Within minutes, thousands had liked, reposted, or piled on. The conversation spiraling beyond the post itself into a familiar clash of opinions about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The news of the deal itself had been positioned as a triumph. After all, this was a couple who, just a few years ago, walked away from the machinery of the British monarchy and set out to carve a new existence in the arena of global media. The announcement was neatly packaged, polished, and accompanied by Meghan's own words, how she and Harry were absolutely over the moon, proud, and inspired to continue their creative partnership with Netflix. They had projects lined up, a second season of With Love, Meghan, a Christmas special, a heartfelt documentary about Ugandan children living with the legacy of the HIV/AIDS crisis, and even a romantic drama based on the novel Meet Me at the Lake. On paper, it sounded like momentum. In public statements, it read like the natural next chapter of a successful collaboration. But beneath the glow of the press release lay a quiet but glaring detail. This was not the kind of headline-grabbing, nine-figure renewal they had once commanded. The first refusal structure meant Netflix would get first pick of their ideas before anyone else, a subtle but telling change in the dynamic of power between the Sussexes and the streaming giant. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For some, this was an exciting pivot. For others, especially those who had followed their trajectory from royal renegades to media entrepreneurs, it felt like an unspoken admission that the power balance had shifted. And in the shadows of this public relations dance, figures like Piers Morgan waited, not passively, but actively, for the right moment to pounce. He didn't need paragraphs to make his point. Just a repost, a twist of the knife, and the insinuation was clear. The deal wasn't a coup. It was a compromise dressed up in celebratory language. His audience, primed by years of his vocal criticism of the couple, knew exactly how to read it. This was not the first time Morgan had targeted them. His critiques had stretched back to the earliest days of their relationship, often couched in the language of journalistic skepticism but dripping with personal disdain. He had dismissed interviews, mocked their ventures, and even sparred over their mental health revelations. To him, this deal was just another opportunity to underline his narrative, that Harry and Meghan's grip on relevance was slipping, and that the media world was now setting the terms, not them. But the reaction to Morgan's jab was not universally one-sided. Supporters of the couple rushed to defend them, pointing out that first look or first refusal deals are a common arrangement in the industry, often allowing for creative freedom while securing a stable platform. They argued that the focus should be on the substance of the projects, not the financial terms behind them. After all, their first Netflix partnership had produced award-winning content, including the highly watched Harry and Meghan docuseries, which became one of the platform's biggest nonfiction launches. The friction, then, wasn't just about the terms of a contract. It was about the tug-of-war between perception and reality. And perception has always been the currency in which Harry and Meghan operate. Every move they make, whether it's a podcast appearance, a charitable initiative, or a scripted drama, exists under the microscope of public scrutiny. Their victories are measured not only in audience numbers or critical reviews, but in whether the press spins the story as proof of their independence or as evidence of decline. The Netflix deal was no different. Supportive headlines praised their persistence in a cutthroat industry. Critical voices labeled it a downgrade. Neutral industry analysts saw it as a pragmatic arrangement in a streaming market where big budgets are shrinking and content is more competitive than ever. The tension at the heart of this story is not just about the deal itself, it's about what it symbolizes. This is a couple that once stood at the intersection of royal tradition and Hollywood opportunity, commanding staggering sums and global attention. They had, at one point, the aura of untouchable cultural capital. But as time passed, their ventures began to meet mixed receptions. Archwell Audio's Spotify partnership ended prematurely. Certain projects struggled to find the kind of mainstream traction that would justify their lofty deals. The Netflix arrangement, as announced, seems like a steadying of the ship rather than a bold acceleration forward. For their critics, that's confirmation of a decline. For their defenders, it's proof of adaptability. In this light, Piers Morgan's mocking post becomes more than just a snide remark. It's a battle cry for one side of the cultural divide. He represents a faction that not only questions their success, but revels in the suggestion that the Sussexes might not be the bankable stars they once were. His message, amplified by thousands of shares, was a reminder that in the court of public opinion, there are as many eager to see them stumble as there are to see them soar. The timing of Morgan's post only heightened its impact. The Sussexes' announcement was barely a day old, the ink on the press statements still metaphorically wet when his repost hit. It framed the conversation early, setting a tone that mainstream media outlets would inevitably have to acknowledge. Suddenly, coverage of the Netflix deal was no longer just about the projects in development. It was about whether the arrangement was a step forward or a quiet retreat. Meanwhile, in the couple's own camp, there was no direct engagement with the criticism. Meghan's prepared statement spoke of inspiration and creative ambition. Harry, as is often the case in their media ventures, stayed mostly in the background. This silence, while consistent with their broader media strategy, allowed voices like Morgan's to fill the void. For the average reader scrolling through headlines, the snarky first refusal joke was just as visible as the official project list. This is the environment in which the Sussexes must now operate. A media landscape where every deal is a referendum, every statement is dissected, and every rival commentator has a platform to shape the narrative. Whether one believes this deal marks the couple's steady rise or gradual leveling off, it's undeniable that their brand is in a new phase. They are no longer the fresh breakaways from royal life, armed with the novelty of rebellion. They are seasoned players in the entertainment world, and the rules they face now are those of ratings, budgets, and cultural resonance. The introduction to this story, then, is not just about a single deal or a single mocking post. It's about the collision of ambition and perception, of creative vision and media spin. It's about how one couple's career moves have become a global spectator sport, and how figures like Piers Morgan are both antagonists and amplifiers in that spectacle. Over the next chapters, we will pull apart not just the mechanics of this Netflix deal, but the intricate web of history, rivalry, industry economics, and public sentiment that makes this moment so charged. Began with the polished, deliberate rhythm of a press announcement. The kind of media moment that comes with weeks of preparation, careful wording, and a precise rollout strategy. It was August 11th, a date marked on calendars within Archwell Productions and Netflix for months, perhaps longer. The air was thick with anticipation, not just among those involved in the deal, but in the wider public and media circles eager to see what the Sussexes would do next. At exactly the agreed-upon hour, the news broke. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had signed a fresh agreement with Netflix. The headlines hit like a coordinated wave across major outlets, each quoting the same core details, but with subtle variations in tone. Some framed it as a win, proof that their partnership with the streaming giant was far from over. Others took a more measured approach, noting that this new deal wasn't quite the same as the one they'd signed years prior. In their official statement, the couple struck an upbeat, forward-looking tone. Meghan spoke of being absolutely over the moon and inspired to continue their creative partnership. She highlighted the upcoming projects, a second season of With Love, Meghan, a Christmas special slated for December, a deeply personal documentary titled Masaka Kids, A Rhythm Within, and a romantic drama adaptation of the novel Meet Me at the Lake. The language was warm and filled with optimism, as though these projects were more than just content. They were contributions to cultural and emotional storytelling. Harry's name appeared alongside Meghan's in the statement, lending unity to their brand as a couple, though the specifics of his personal role were left vague, as they often are in these joint announcements. For the public, the phrase first refusal was where curiosity turned into debate. Industry insiders understood this as shorthand for a first-look deal, an arrangement where Netflix would get the first chance to greenlight their projects before the couple could shop them elsewhere. Such agreements are common, but the subtext here was unavoidable. Their original deal had been touted as a 9-figure blockbuster, a seismic moment in the streaming wars. Now, the new arrangement felt leaner, more cautious, and, for some, less powerful. The unspoken question hung in the air. Was this a strategic pivot or a subtle step down? Netflix, for its part, avoided language that compared the two deals directly. Their public-facing comments focused on the creative pipeline, the storytelling potential, and the ongoing collaboration. It was clear that they saw value in maintaining the partnership, even if the financial structure had evolved. In a content landscape where budgets are tighter and audience tastes shift rapidly, keeping Harry and Meghan on board made sense. They brought name recognition, an international platform, and the possibility of high-profile releases tied to royal intrigue, social advocacy, and lifestyle appeal. Inside the Sussexes' camp, the announcement was treated as a moment to reinforce their brand's resilience. Their earlier media ventures, the docuseries Harry and Meghan, the Invictus Games documentary Heart of Invictus, and the first season of With Love, Meghan, had generated both strong viewership and polarizing discussion. The couple's strategy seemed to be leaning into this duality, embracing the attention, whether glowing or critical, and using it to remain part of the public conversation. For Netflix, that conversation was valuable. For the Sussexes, it was survival in an industry where irrelevance is the only real death. But the way the news was received outside their supportive circle varied wildly. In the United States, coverage leaned toward curiosity, with entertainment outlets focusing on the projects themselves. In the UK, however, where their departure from royal life still stirs deep opinions, the announcement quickly became entangled with skepticism. Commentators weighed in on the nature of the deal, contrasting the exuberant language of the Sussexes' statement with the more tempered reality of the arrangement. Some questioned whether the couple had delivered enough in their first deal to justify the continuation. Others argued that the choice of projects, a lifestyle series, a holiday special, and a romantic drama, was too safe, too on-brand, lacking the daring edge that might reframe their media narrative. This divergence in perception underscored the challenge they faced. Every public move they make is not judged on its own terms, but through the prism of their broader story. The ex-royals who defied the institution moved across the Atlantic and declared their independence. That origin story remains their most powerful asset, but also the shadow under which every new venture is measured. Success is expected to match or exceed that initial wave of attention. Anything less invites the charge that they are coasting on past notoriety. The announcement also carried a calculated rhythm in the timing of its secondary details. By revealing that With Love, Meghan would return for a second season later in the month, and that a Christmas special was already on the schedule, they positioned themselves as active, consistent creators rather than one-hit collaborators. The Massacre Kids documentary, with its humanitarian focus, was strategically chosen to appeal to global audiences and reinforce their philanthropic image. And the Meet Me at the Lake adaptation added a personal, almost romantic note, drawing on themes that could be connected, subtly or overtly, to their own love story. Still, there was an undercurrent of caution in the rollout. No mention of exact financial figures. No side-by-side comparison to their original deal. No overly grand promises of audience reach or industry impact. The tone was celebratory but measured, as though they were aware of the tightrope they were walking between ambition and expectation. They had to convince the public, and perhaps even themselves, that this was not a scaled-back arrangement, but a refined one. A shift toward quality over quantity, creativity over spectacle. Yet in the world of celebrity media, perception often outpaces reality. Before the ink on the press coverage had dried, social media was already buzzing with interpretations. Supporters applauded the focus on meaningful stories and the apparent long-term commitment from Netflix. Critics saw the first refusal clause as an implicit demotion, a sign that the streaming giant wanted to hedge its bets. This was the lens through which the announcement would be remembered, not as a straightforward business decision, but as a symbolic moment in the ongoing saga of Harry and Meghan's life after royalty. It's in this swirl of optimism, suspicion, and interpretation that the deal's true significance takes shape. For the Sussexes, the announcement was about cementing their place in an industry that demands both consistency and reinvention. For Netflix, it was about securing content with built-in publicity value. For the public, it was another chapter in a drama that has blurred the lines between personal narrative and professional brand. And for those like Piers Morgan, who see every step they take as an opportunity to challenge their legitimacy, it was fresh ammunition. This chapter is the foundation for the conflict to come. The deal itself is only the opening move. The real story lies in how it will be used, defended, mocked, and tested in the months ahead. In that sense, August 11th was not just the day the Sussexes extended their Netflix relationship. It was the day they stepped, once again, onto the stage where every word, project, and contract is part of a larger, high-stakes performance. Opened with a tension that could be cut with a knife, the kind that only comes when promises, power, and reputations intersect. Behind closed doors at Netflix, meetings had taken place in pristine boardrooms, rooms whose glass walls reflected not just light, but ambition. Executives pored over analytics reports, viewer metrics, and revenue projections, trying to predict whether the Sussexes' new slate of projects would justify the investment. On paper, Harry and Meghan were a brand, globally recognizable, socially and culturally relevant. Their names alone could drive attention, clicks, and subscriptions. Yet, there was an undercurrent of unease, the questions that no press release would ever capture. Could they sustain creativity under scrutiny? Would the audience engage beyond curiosity? And most importantly, could the Sussexes deliver projects that were not just talked about, but watched? Inside the Sussexes' own offices, the atmosphere was a mixture of exhilaration and calculated anxiety. Meghan paced while Harry reviewed scripts for MOCKERY Kids, a documentary that promised heart and controversy in equal measure. Every detail mattered, from the timing of interviews with children and local leaders to the narrative arc that would shape the public perception of the initiative. Harry, meanwhile, was deeply involved in strategy, his focus split between creative input and protective oversight. He understood that every project, no matter how noble in intent, would be dissected for its symbolic meaning. This was the price of being Harry and Meghan. Their work was never simply entertainment. It was statement-making, image-shaping, and, inevitably, fodder for critics. The first whisper of trouble came not from the press, but from within Netflix itself. While the Sussexes had signed the first refusal agreement, a document brimming with legal language and clauses designed to protect both parties, subtle tension began to emerge around execution. Executives noticed discrepancies between the promised schedule and actual progress. Scripts for the With Love, Meghan's second season were being revised constantly, as creative differences surfaced. Harry and Meghan's insistence on maintaining a high degree of control over content clashed with production timelines, and small delays started to accumulate. What began as minor scheduling conflicts began to look like potential cracks in a partnership that the media had portrayed as seamless. By mid-August, these operational tensions became more pronounced. The Christmas special, which had been intended as a cheerful addition to their portfolio, encountered logistical hurdles. Filming locations had been booked months in advance, but changes in cast availability and script revisions caused a domino effect. Meanwhile, MOCKERY Kids faced regulatory scrutiny, with local authorities questioning filming permits, ethical considerations regarding child participation, and the potential for negative media coverage. Each obstacle, though manageable individually, collectively created a sense of urgency, a pressure cooker environment where any misstep could become public fodder. Within the Sussexes' circle, discussions became increasingly fraught. Advisors and aides, those who had worked tirelessly to craft the public image of the couple, found themselves in long debates over messaging and timing. Meghan, ever focused on narrative coherence, pushed for clear storytelling that highlighted empathy and social responsibility. Harry, aware of both his public image and the couple's business stake, insisted on strategic messaging that mitigated risk without sacrificing authenticity. The balance was delicate. The wrong statement or premature announcement could trigger backlash that would ripple across social media, news outlets, and entertainment reporting. Outside the bubble of executives and advisors, the public conversation began to take shape. Twitter threads, Instagram posts, and TikTok videos dissected every nuance of the announcement. Analysts speculated on the financial implications, noting that the original $100 million deal had set a high benchmark. Was this renewal indicative of continued faith or a strategic recalibration by Netflix? Headlines suggested everything from Sussex's confirmed influence, but at what cost, to first refusal clause hints at Netflix doubts. The couple's publicists worked overtime, releasing clarifying statements, adjusting visuals, and even coordinating interviews to reinforce the narrative of enthusiasm and ongoing creativity. Amid this swirl, the first signs of internal discord leaked into public consciousness, though subtly. Production insiders, speaking anonymously to media outlets, hinted at tension during script development sessions, noting that the couple's desire for absolute control sometimes slowed workflow. Observers speculated that the rigorous scrutiny from royal watchers had carried over into the business world, creating a dynamic where no decision could be made without considering both audience perception and brand integrity. It became clear that Harry and Meghan were not just producing content. They were orchestrating a performance with every meeting, memo, and draft serving as part of a larger narrative. By late August, the situation escalated. The second season of With Love, Meghan faced budget negotiations that exposed underlying vulnerabilities in the partnership. Netflix executives began pressing for firmer deadlines and more streamlined approval processes. Their goal was simple: ensure content delivery on time and within budget. Harry and Meghan, valuing creative freedom above all, resisted, creating a stalemate. Emails flew back and forth, each word carefully weighed, yet the tone often carried a subtle tension that was impossible to hide. Both sides knew that the public's perception would eventually reflect internal dynamics, but neither was willing to yield prematurely. During this time, social media became a double-edged sword. Supporters amplified every success and positive announcement, framing the couple as visionary creators and philanthropic leaders. Critics, however, dissected every hint of delay or adjustment, suggesting that the couple's high-profile status had inflated expectations they could not meet. The contrast was stark. The more visible they became, the more scrutiny followed, creating a feedback loop that magnified small operational challenges into major public controversies. As August turned to September, the first major challenge emerged. A leaked internal memo from Netflix indicated concern about production timelines for Masaka Kids. The memo, though intended for internal circulation, found its way to entertainment outlets, sparking speculation about conflict between creative control and corporate oversight. Headlines read, "Sussex's clash with Netflix executives, creative vision or control issues?" Social media erupted with debate, fans defending the couple's right to control content, critics questioning professionalism, and industry analysts weighing in on contract dynamics. In response, the Sussex's team acted quickly. Public statements emphasized that revisions and scheduling adjustments were standard in high-quality production, framing any delays as part of their commitment to excellence. Behind the scenes, meetings intensified, timelines were renegotiated, and additional support staff were brought in to streamline approvals. Every move was calculated to maintain momentum while mitigating negative press. Yet the pressure was undeniable. Each day brought new scrutiny, new expectations, and new risks that threatened to overshadow the creative intentions behind their projects. By the end of the first month following the announcement, the environment had transformed from celebratory optimism to tense negotiation and strategic maneuvering. The initial euphoria of securing a continued partnership with Netflix had given way to the reality of execution. The complexities of media production, the weight of public perception, and the delicate balance of creative control versus corporate oversight. Harry and Meghan's world, once defined by their personal choices and public appearances, was now intricately entwined with the mechanics of content delivery, financial considerations, and narrative control on a global scale. The chapter closes with a stark realization. the Sussexes' ambitions, while bold and public-facing, were under constant test. Every decision, from casting to editing, carried implications far beyond the screen. Their names were powerful, but that power came with responsibility and risk. As the projects moved forward, one question loomed larger than any deadline or script revision. Could Harry and Meghan navigate the treacherous waters of global scrutiny, corporate expectations, and creative ambition without compromise to their vision? Or would the pressures of this high-stakes partnership reveal fractures that no statement or press release could repair? Chapter 3 began in the quiet hours of early September, when the world outside was unaware of the storm brewing behind the glossy doors of the Sussexes' California offices. The air carried a subtle tension, an almost imperceptible weight that hung over every interaction, every phone call, and every email. At first glance, the couple appeared composed, serene even, continuing to maintain the polished image that the world had come to expect. But beneath the surface, the machinery of their lives was grinding under pressure, each cog scrutinized and calibrated to maintain an illusion of perfect control while the reality grew increasingly complicated. The first challenge arrived not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a whisper of unease. Production timelines for With Love, Meghan had begun to deviate from their original schedule, causing ripple effects across the associated teams. Editors, directors, and production assistants found themselves caught in an endless loop of revisions and clarifications. Footage that had once been approved suddenly required adjustments. Scenes intended for the initial episodes were delayed, and scripts were sent back multiple times for reevaluation. Each iteration, though minor in isolation, cumulatively created an environment of heightened stress and urgency. For Harry and Meghan, this was more than a production problem. It was a threat to their carefully cultivated image. Every delay had the potential to become a headline, every minor correction a viral social media post. While the internal pressures mounted, the external world began to take notice. Industry insiders started to speculate on the couple's ability to manage a high-profile media venture effectively. Anonymous sources whispered to entertainment outlets about conflicts between creative freedom and corporate expectations, painting a picture of a partnership strained by the very control that had initially seemed so empowering. Headlines oscillated between admiration and skepticism, from Sussex's push creative boundaries to creative vision or corporate clash. Netflix and the Sussexes at odds. Public sentiment, as ever, was divided. Fans celebrated every achievement, while critics dissected each perceived misstep. The scrutiny was relentless, and Harry and Meghan felt it keenly. Internally, the couple's team began to fracture under pressure. Advisors who had once moved seamlessly in alignment with the Sussexes' goals now found themselves in subtle conflicts over strategy and messaging. Some suggested prioritizing production timelines over narrative perfection to appease Netflix executives, while others argued that compromising creative integrity would ultimately damage the brand. Meetings that once lasted an hour now stretched into marathon sessions, with heated discussions about scheduling, budget allocations, and strategic compromises. Every decision became a balancing act, with consequences that could ripple through both their professional and personal reputations. Adding to the tension was the growing weight of public expectation. Social media platforms were ablaze with commentary, often misinformed but always passionate. Clips from With Love, Meghan were dissected frame by frame, interviews analyzed for tone, and every public appearance scrutinized for signs of strain. Online forums debated whether the delays were a natural part of production or a sign of dysfunction. Memes began circulating, subtly mocking the perceived chaos behind the polished facade. Even well-intentioned praise carried an undercurrent of judgment, a reminder that in the age of instant information, every action was magnified, every misstep amplified. In the midst of this, Harry and Meghan faced another challenge: the management of external partnerships. Sponsors, collaborators, and affiliated brands expected not only timely delivery, but a consistent alignment with the couple's public messaging. Negotiations that had once been straightforward now required intricate coordination to ensure that all parties remained satisfied without compromising creative intent. Each contract discussion became a delicate dance, a negotiation of expectations and boundaries. Any miscommunication could trigger reputational risk or financial loss, and the stakes were high. September's second week brought the first signs of a more serious internal conflict. Creative differences, long simmering under the surface, began to bubble over. Harry, focused on messaging and narrative cohesion, clashed with Meghan, who prioritized thematic resonance and emotional authenticity. The debates were not personal in nature, but were fueled by high stakes and intense scrutiny. Advisors and assistants were caught in the middle, tasked with mediating disputes while maintaining the appearance of a unified front. The couple's dynamic, once characterized by seamless collaboration, now reflected the pressures of managing a multi-million-dollar media enterprise under the glare of public attention. Simultaneously, production staff expressed growing concern over resource allocation. Teams were stretched thin, working extended hours to meet shifting deadlines. Footage that had been scheduled for editing now required reshoots, and logistical challenges with remote filming locations exacerbated delays. Harry and Meghan, while supportive, found themselves negotiating with multiple parties to maintain both creative control and operational efficiency. Each resolution required delicate compromise, a balancing act that tested both patience and strategic foresight. Amidst these operational challenges, a more subtle but no less significant issue emerged: narrative control. The couple's brand was not merely a media presence, but a carefully curated identity, one that required constant attention to tone, visual presentation, and messaging. Any unintended leak or offhand comment could ignite speculation, misinterpretation, or outright controversy. For Harry and Meghan, the boundary between personal and professional blurred, with every decision scrutinized through multiple lenses: public perception, corporate responsibility, and long-term brand integrity. The management of this duality became a full-time concern, demanding continuous vigilance. By mid-September, the tension reached a critical point. The combination of production delays, creative differences, and external scrutiny coalesced into a palpable pressure that permeated every aspect of the Sussex's operations. Meetings became more frequent, discussions more intense, and the air of certainty that had once characterized their projects gave way to a climate of caution and careful negotiation. Each day brought new challenges, yet also opportunities for creative triumph, reinforcing the high-stakes nature of the work. In this environment, the couple's commitment to their vision remained unwavering, but the reality of sustaining such a large-scale media presence became increasingly complex. Harry and Meghan had to navigate the competing demands of creativity, corporate oversight, public perception, and operational efficiency. Every choice carried implications far beyond the immediate context, and the margin for error grew ever smaller. The challenge was no longer simply producing content, but managing a global brand under scrutiny, ensuring that each project reinforced their desired narrative while mitigating the risks of exposure, criticism, or misalignment. As the chapter closed, one truth became undeniable: the Sussexes were operating in a domain where stakes were immense, and the consequences of misstep were amplified exponentially. The intersection of creative ambition, corporate expectation, and public perception created a landscape where every decision mattered. For Harry and Meghan, success required not only talent and vision, but strategy, diplomacy, and the ability to maintain composure under relentless pressure. The narrative of their journey was no longer solely about creative projects. It was a study in resilience, adaptability, and the intricate dynamics of influence at a global scale. Chapter 4 opened with a storm brewing far from the cameras, in a quiet office tucked away in the hills of Montecito. It was a place that had been designed to shield its occupants from prying eyes, a sanctuary where decisions could be made with precision and discretion. Yet, the very walls that promised protection now seemed to amplify tension, reflecting the mounting pressures that had begun to infiltrate every aspect of the Sussex's operations. The previous weeks had tested the limits of patience, strategy, and loyalty, and what was once manageable had now escalated into a series of crises that threatened not only projects but reputations. The first tremor appeared in the form of financial discrepancies discovered during a routine internal audit. Initially, the numbers seemed minor, almost inconsequential. A small budget overrun here, a misallocated invoice there. But as accountants and advisors delved deeper, patterns began to emerge. Patterns that suggested systemic oversights, if not mismanagement. The concern was not simply about dollars and cents. It was about the potential implications for public perception. Any misstep in financial transparency could quickly spiral into headlines, feeding the narrative of incompetence or irresponsibility that critics had been eager to attach to the Sussexes. Every figure, every ledger entry, became a potential story, a possible lever for scandal, and the team found themselves navigating a minefield where one wrong step could ignite a firestorm of negative press. At the same time, the interpersonal dynamics within the team began to fray. The people who had once operated in seamless coordination now found themselves divided along subtle lines of loyalty, philosophy, and approach. Some were deeply committed to preserving creative integrity, while others prioritized operational efficiency and public optics. Meetings that once produced clear action plans now dissolved into debates and quiet disagreements, with even minor decisions requiring prolonged negotiation. Advisors who had previously worked harmoniously under pressure now felt the strain of conflicting priorities. Tensions grew over the smallest issues, from scheduling disagreements to the prioritization of tasks, and the atmosphere thickened with unspoken frustrations. Meanwhile, external pressures intensified. Netflix executives, initially patient and supportive, began to express concern over project timelines and quality control. Calls from corporate liaisons became more frequent, each one carrying a subtle weight of expectation and accountability. The executives were not overtly critical, but their inquiries and reminders underscored the stakes involved. The Sussexes were navigating a delicate balance, maintaining the autonomy that was central to their vision while simultaneously ensuring alignment with contractual obligations and corporate expectations. Each conversation became a negotiation, a careful calibration between asserting authority and demonstrating reliability. The media, never far behind, sensed the undercurrents of strain. Entertainment journalists began to report on subtle signs of discord, drawing attention to delayed episodes, rescheduled interviews, and social media silence from the couple that seemed inconsistent with their usual patterns. Headlines, both speculative and sensational, proliferated. Sussex production hits snags. Royal ambitions clash with corporate realities. Behind the scenes, creative tensions at the heart of Sussex media. The coverage, though indirect, added another layer of pressure, reminding the team that perception was as critical as reality, and that the court of public opinion could be unforgiving. Within this climate, the couple's personal life could not escape scrutiny. Family obligations, private events, and public appearances required coordination with meticulous attention to detail. Even moments intended for rest or personal reflection were constrained by schedules, security, and visibility concerns. The intertwining of personal and professional spheres created a constant, inescapable tension, where even private actions carried public consequences. A single misinterpreted gesture could become fodder for speculation, each decision weighed for both its immediate impact and its potential resonance with audiences and critics alike. In the midst of operational and media pressures, strategic decision-making became increasingly fraught. Every choice regarding content, messaging, and public interaction required consideration of multiple dimensions: contractual compliance, creative integrity, audience reception, and long-term brand sustainability. Advisors provided detailed analyses and projected scenarios, weighing risks against potential rewards. Contingency plans multiplied, each designed to mitigate exposure to criticism, financial loss, or operational disruption. The sheer complexity of managing these intersecting factors demanded a level of foresight, discipline, and composure that tested even the most experienced professionals. Amid these pressures, the team faced the additional challenge of internal leaks. Rumors, half-truths, and speculative comments began circulating within the broader entertainment industry, threatening to destabilize carefully managed narratives. The Sussexes' inner circle, once united by shared vision and trust, now had to contend with the possibility that confidential information could be exposed, intentionally or inadvertently. Each rumor had the potential to amplify tensions, creating new points of friction and forcing the team to engage in constant monitoring and rapid response. Adding to the complexity were the social media dynamics. Platforms that had once been channels of connection and promotion now served as arenas for scrutiny, debate, and judgment. Every post, every tweet, and every comment was evaluated not only for its immediate engagement, but for its broader implications on the Sussex's brand, credibility, and public perception. Analysts monitored trends, sentiment, and viral potential, preparing rapid responses to mitigate any negative impact. The couple's presence online was carefully curated, yet even with meticulous planning, the unpredictable nature of digital discourse introduced an element of volatility that required constant vigilance. By late September, the cumulative effect of financial scrutiny, operational stress, internal tension, external pressure, and media speculation reached a tipping point. The team recognized that without decisive action, the projects could falter, reputations could suffer, and the overarching vision could be compromised. Meetings became more structured, with a focus on prioritization, accountability, and proactive problem-solving. Every initiative was reviewed for feasibility, risk, and alignment with long-term objectives. The urgency of the situation demanded leadership, clarity, and relentless attention to detail, ensuring that even the smallest decision was made with awareness of its broader implications. Yet, despite the mounting pressure, moments of resilience and creativity emerged. The couple and their team discovered innovative approaches to workflow, communication, and content management. Solutions were found not through compromise alone, but through strategic adaptation, finding ways to reconcile creative ambition with practical necessity. These breakthroughs, though often subtle, reinforced the team's capacity to navigate complexity, reminding them that even under strain, achievement remained possible. As Chapter 4 drew to a close, the Sussexes and their team had reached a critical inflection point. The challenges of creative management, operational oversight, public scrutiny, and strategic planning had converged, presenting a test of endurance, skill, and vision. Each decision carried amplified consequences, yet the couple's commitment to their objectives remained steadfast. The landscape had shifted from manageable challenges to intricate, high-stakes navigation, requiring constant vigilance and strategic acuity. In this environment, success would depend not only on talent and creativity, but on the ability to anticipate, adapt, and persevere under pressure, a reality that would define the trajectory of their endeavors in the months to come. Chapter 5 began with the realization that the stakes had escalated beyond anything the Sussexes had encountered previously. The previous weeks had been a series of subtle tremors, each a warning sign that the situation was moving toward a tipping point. Now, those tremors had become undeniable shocks, and the team had no choice but to confront the full weight of scrutiny, internal strain, and external pressure. The focus shifted from mere management to crisis navigation, requiring precise coordination, strategic foresight, and a depth of resilience that tested every member of the inner circle. The first challenge of this chapter was the intensifying media narrative. Rumors had solidified into persistent reports, with entertainment outlets speculating on the couple's professional stability, financial management, and interpersonal dynamics within their team. Headlines were no longer cautious. They carried assertive claims, framed to suggest that the Sussexes were struggling to maintain control over their projects. Analysts noted a shift in tone, from curiosity to suspicion, and the team recognized that this narrative, if left unchallenged, could influence contractual negotiations, audience perception, and even the willingness of future collaborators to engage. The Sussexes had to respond strategically, carefully crafting statements that reassured stakeholders without providing ammunition to critics. Each word, each phrasing, was weighed for its impact, a delicate dance between transparency and protective discretion. Amid this heightened external scrutiny, internal dynamics had become more complex. Team members who had once operated seamlessly under stress now exhibited signs of fatigue, frustration, and conflicting priorities. The couple's advisors, while loyal, were navigating subtle differences in vision and methodology. Disagreements over content strategy, release timelines, and messaging escalated into discussions that were emotionally charged, yet no less important for the future of their initiatives. Every meeting became a negotiation, every decision a test of alignment, and every minor misstep carried the potential to ripple outward, affecting morale, productivity, and ultimately, the outcomes of high-stakes projects. Financial oversight continued to be a critical pressure point. The discrepancies discovered earlier had prompted intensified audits and deeper review processes. Advisors worked tirelessly to reconcile budgets, track expenditures, and anticipate potential gaps or misallocations. What had begun as minor inconsistencies now revealed patterns requiring swift intervention. While the numbers themselves were important, the symbolic weight of financial mismanagement was even greater. In a world where public perception and corporate trust are intertwined, a single overlooked ledger entry could be amplified into a narrative questioning competence and responsibility. To counteract this, the Sussexes implemented stringent oversight measures, ensuring that every transaction, every budget line, and every projected expense was meticulously accounted for and justifiable. Compounding these challenges was the relentless nature of social media scrutiny. Platforms that had once been effective channels for promotion and audience engagement now served as arenas for speculation, judgment, and viral criticism. Every post was evaluated not only for its content, but for its timing, context, and potential implications. Analysts tracked sentiment, engagement, and emerging narratives, providing rapid feedback to shape the couple's online presence. Even a seemingly innocuous post could spark discussion, provoke criticism, or fuel misconceptions. The team had to anticipate reactions, preempt misinterpretations, and calibrate messaging to preserve both credibility and public interest. This constant monitoring created a dynamic of perpetual alertness, where the line between personal expression and professional strategy became increasingly blurred. Amid these operational and public pressures, the couple's personal lives remained under scrutiny. Every family gathering, private trip, and social interaction carried the potential for visibility, interpretation, or misrepresentation. The integration of personal and professional spheres required meticulous planning and foresight. Security, logistics, and optics became inseparable considerations, as even brief lapses could invite unwanted attention or speculation. The Sussexes had to navigate these circumstances with grace, ensuring that personal moments were preserved while public perception remained managed and coherent. In this chapter, a pivotal moment emerged with the arrival of an external advisory team. Recognized experts in crisis management, media strategy, and operational logistics were brought in to provide fresh perspective and reinforce strategic planning. Their assessments highlighted not only the immediate risks, but also structural vulnerabilities that required long-term remediation. Recommendations ranged from enhanced oversight protocols and transparent reporting mechanisms to carefully curated public messaging and proactive engagement with stakeholders. The integration of these advisors provided both guidance and accountability, allowing the Sussexes to approach each decision with heightened awareness of its implications and potential outcomes. Creative projects, which had always been central to the couple's vision, now became arenas of strategic negotiation. Content development, narrative framing, and production scheduling were revisited with an emphasis on mitigating risk while maintaining authenticity and engagement. Teams were restructured, workflows optimized, and creative reviews intensified. The tension between artistic expression and operational rigor required careful balancing, with leadership ensuring that creative integrity was not sacrificed for the sake of procedural control, yet also recognizing that structure and discipline were essential to navigate the mounting challenges. External relationships also became critical during this period. Collaborators, partners, and corporate stakeholders were engaged with greater frequency and intentionality. Trust had to be maintained, negotiations carefully managed, and alignment of expectations ensured. Every interaction carried significance, from casual correspondence to formal meetings, and each had the potential to influence the trajectory of ongoing projects. The Sussexes' capacity to communicate vision, demonstrate reliability, and inspire confidence became a central focus, emphasizing that the success of their endeavors relied not only on creative execution, but on relational acumen. By the midpoint of the chapter, the cumulative pressures began to manifest in tangible operational challenges. Project timelines were tested, content revisions multiplied, and team morale fluctuated. Advisors implemented stress testing protocols to anticipate potential disruptions and establish contingency plans. The focus shifted from reactive problem-solving to proactive scenario planning, anticipating potential complications and developing strategies to address them before they could escalate. This approach underscored a transition from management of day-to-day operations to strategic stewardship of the entire enterprise. The latter part of Chapter 5 highlighted the delicate interplay between public perception and internal operations. The Sussexes recognized that success required synchronizing these spheres, ensuring operational excellence while cultivating a narrative of competence, creativity, and stability. Every decision, from financial allocation to social media engagement, became a component of a broader strategy to maintain trust, inspire confidence, and preserve the integrity of their vision. This holistic approach emphasized that challenges were not isolated incidents, but interconnected factors influencing the overall trajectory of their work. By the conclusion of the chapter, a critical realization had crystallized. Resilience was no longer optional, but essential. Navigating financial scrutiny, internal tension, public perception, creative ambition, and operational complexity demanded sustained focus, adaptability, and unwavering commitment. The Sussexes and their team had reached a juncture where proactive strategy, decisive leadership, and meticulous coordination were the defining factors determining success or failure. The chapter closed on a note of cautious determination, with the couple and their advisors poised to navigate the next wave of challenges with heightened awareness, strategic acuity, and reinforced resolve. Chapter 6 opened with an immediate sense of urgency. The previous chapter had established a foundation of challenges, and now those challenges were compounding at a pace that threatened to overwhelm even the most prepared of teams. It became clear that the Sussexes were navigating not only the pressures of their professional commitments, but also the intricate web of expectations, scrutiny, and potential missteps that accompanied a public life so intensely observed. In this chapter, the focus shifted toward the convergence of external crises and internal pressures, illustrating how high-stakes decision-making unfolded under relentless observation. The first significant development involved the escalation of legal concerns. The initial financial discrepancies that had been flagged weeks earlier had now evolved into formal inquiries, bringing legal advisors, auditors, and compliance experts into daily discussions. The Sussexes team had to address potential ramifications ranging from contractual obligations to regulatory scrutiny, all while maintaining operational continuity. Each action was weighed not only for its immediate consequence, but for its potential to influence broader narratives in media reporting and public perception. The interplay between legal compliance and public relations became more intricate, requiring continuous consultation, review, and strategic planning to ensure that one misstep did not amplify another. Simultaneously, the scrutiny from media outlets intensified. The couple had experienced the early phases of speculation and rumor, but by this point, reporting had transformed into targeted analysis of their personal choices, public appearances, and even body language. Every statement, photograph, or social media post was dissected, generating interpretations that ranged from mildly critical to overtly accusatory. The team recognized that control over messaging could not fully neutralize speculation, but strategic engagement could mitigate misrepresentation and reinforce key narratives. Media strategy meetings became more frequent, with the couple and advisors reviewing messaging, timing, and the potential impact of various statements on different platforms. The goal was to balance transparency with discretion, ensuring that the Sussexes' perspective was communicated while avoiding escalation of controversy. Internal dynamics remained a focal challenge. The demands of crisis management, legal consultation, and media oversight placed significant strain on team cohesion. Even seasoned advisors experienced moments of tension and disagreement over priorities, strategy, and execution. Leadership required a combination of decisiveness and empathy, as the Sussexes navigated differing opinions while reinforcing trust and commitment within the team. These internal negotiations often took place under tight deadlines and high-stakes conditions, where the margin for error was minimal. The management of internal relationships became as critical as external engagements, highlighting the necessity of emotional intelligence alongside operational skill. Chapter 6 also highlighted the complexities of public engagements. Appearances that were once routine now required meticulous planning, from security and logistics to messaging and audience perception. Each public moment had the potential to reinforce credibility or invite criticism, depending on execution and context. The Sussexes team had to coordinate with event organizers, media liaisons, and personal security to anticipate potential issues and craft an experience that aligned with both the couple's objectives and broader public expectations. These engagements tested the team's ability to integrate strategic foresight with real-time adaptability, balancing preparedness with responsiveness. A significant subplot of this chapter involved the management of personal well-being. The couple faced not only operational stressors but the psychological toll of continuous scrutiny and expectation. Advisors incorporated support measures to address mental and emotional health, recognizing that resilience was both a personal and professional requirement. Regular assessments, reflective discussions, and carefully scheduled breaks were introduced to maintain focus and prevent burnout. The interconnection between personal stability and professional performance became increasingly apparent, emphasizing that effective management required attention to both tangible operational factors and intangible human considerations. The chapter also explored the strategic recalibration of content and initiatives. Previous projects were reassessed in light of heightened scrutiny, with adjustments made to timelines, scope, and messaging. Teams were restructured to optimize efficiency, and additional oversight layers were introduced to prevent errors and maintain quality. The Sussexes' creative vision was preserved, but execution now demanded enhanced procedural rigor. Each project became a microcosm of broader strategic objectives, reflecting the necessity of harmonizing creativity with operational discipline under pressure. External alliances gained renewed importance. Partnerships with collaborators, corporate stakeholders, and advocacy groups were carefully maintained and nurtured, ensuring alignment of expectations and mutual understanding of objectives. Strategic communication with these allies emphasized both competence and reliability, reinforcing the Sussexes' capacity to deliver on commitments despite ongoing challenges. These relationships provided not only operational support, but also a network of influence capable of amplifying favorable narratives and mitigating negative speculation. The maintenance of trust, credibility, and responsiveness in these alliances was a continuous endeavor, highlighting the intricate interplay between influence and accountability. By the midpoint of Chapter 6, the cumulative effects of operational, legal, media, and personal pressures were evident in both the Sussexes' internal organization and external positioning. Advisors introduced more robust monitoring systems, scenario planning protocols, and rapid response mechanisms to anticipate and manage emergent challenges. The emphasis shifted from reactive problem-solving to proactive resilience building, ensuring that potential disruptions could be addressed swiftly and strategically. This period underscored the necessity of foresight, coordination, and disciplined execution to navigate a landscape characterized by relentless visibility and high-stakes consequences. The latter portion of the chapter focused on pivotal moments that tested leadership, judgment, and adaptability. Unexpected developments, ranging from critical media inquiries to emergent operational bottlenecks, demanded immediate, decisive action. The Sussexes and their team demonstrated the importance of clear communication, unified decision-making, and tactical prioritization in resolving crises. These moments reinforced the broader theme that success was contingent on integrating strategic insight, operational competence, and relational acumen in real time, with little margin for error. Chapter 6 concluded by framing the Sussexes' trajectory as one defined by perseverance, strategic navigation, and disciplined resilience. The interplay of external scrutiny, internal complexity, and operational demand illustrated the multifaceted challenges of maintaining stability and forward momentum. While the pressures were significant, the measures implemented, ranging from enhanced oversight and strategic partnerships to mental and emotional support, provided a framework for managing uncertainty and sustaining progress. The chapter closed with an anticipation of further trials, setting the stage for subsequent developments that would test the limits of endurance, leadership, and strategic acumen. Began with a wave of anticipation that seemed almost palpable, Following the intense operational and public pressures detailed in the previous chapter, this stage of the Sussexes' journey was defined by strategic visibility and creative initiative. After weeks of managing legal inquiries, media scrutiny, and internal logistics, the couple shifted their focus toward expanding their content portfolio, asserting both their narrative and their influence in the digital entertainment landscape. The stakes were high. Each decision not only shaped the trajectory of their projects, but also impacted public perception and the fragile equilibrium of trust and credibility they had worked to maintain. The first major event of this chapter revolved around the official announcement of their new Netflix deal. The multi-year agreement, described as a first refusal or first look deal, was a critical pivot point. Analysts and entertainment insiders quickly began dissecting the implications, noting that such an arrangement allowed Netflix to evaluate the Sussexes' content before other platforms could bid. This structure, while ostensibly a demonstration of trust and partnership between the couple and the streaming giant, also became fodder for public and media speculation. Critics argued it indicated reduced market competitiveness, while supporters framed it as a testament to Netflix's confidence in the Sussexes' creative vision. The announcement set off a cascade of commentary, with journalists, entertainment experts, and social media users analyzing every nuance of the deal, from contractual terminology to projected financial figures. Within hours of the announcement, Piers Morgan re-entered the conversation, injecting sharp criticism and sarcastic commentary that reignited public debate. His social media post, which reposted a quip from Have I Got News For You, mocked the idea of a first refusal deal, joking that rival streamers were frustrated at not having the opportunity to say no first. This seemingly lighthearted jab quickly morphed into a significant media talking point, highlighting the delicate balance between satire, influence, and the potential for reputational impact. Morgan's intervention served as a reminder that even strategic creative moves were susceptible to external ridicule and that public sentiment could shift rapidly, especially when amplified by influential commentators. The chapter delved into the Sussexes' internal reaction to these developments. Advisors and public relations specialists worked to temper potential fallout while reinforcing the couple's intended messaging. For Harry and Meghan, maintaining a sense of confidence and forward momentum was essential, but it was also important to acknowledge public perception. Meetings focused on message alignment, timing of social media posts, and engagement with industry stakeholders, ensuring that communications reinforced the couple's brand as innovators and socially conscious content creators. Emotional management played a parallel role. The scrutiny was intense, and sustaining composure and strategic focus under pressure demanded both preparation and resilience. Chapter 7 also highlighted the operational intricacies involved in executing multiple simultaneous projects. The Sussexes' portfolio included the second season of Meghan's lifestyle series with Love, Meghan, a Christmas special, and ambitious documentary projects such as Massacre Kids and A Rhythm Within. Each production required careful scheduling, logistical planning, and coordination with creative teams spanning multiple countries. The interplay of content creation, distribution strategy, and media promotion created a complex web of dependencies that demanded rigorous oversight. Teams worked around the clock to ensure alignment with deadlines, narrative cohesion, and quality standards, demonstrating the meticulous effort required to deliver a polished final product while navigating external pressures and internal expectations. A critical component of the chapter explored audience engagement and perception management. The couple recognized that public interest extended beyond the content itself, encompassing personal narratives, social impact, and cultural resonance. The documentaries, which focused on humanitarian efforts and societal issues, were particularly sensitive to interpretation and critique. Communications teams developed supplementary materials, interviews, and behind-the-scenes content to provide context, humanize subjects, and enhance viewer connection. These strategies were designed to cultivate empathy, establish credibility, and reinforce the Sussexes' commitment to meaningful storytelling while mitigating the risk of misrepresentation or controversy. Another subplot of Chapter 7 examined the evolving dynamics within the entertainment industry. The announcement of the new deal provoked responses from competitors, including rival streaming platforms and content producers who were keenly aware of the strategic advantage the first refusal arrangement conferred. Analysts speculated about potential ripple effects, including shifts in bidding practices, negotiation leverage, and content development priorities. For the Sussexes, navigating these industry currents required a combination of negotiation acumen, market awareness, and long-term vision. The couple and their team had to anticipate how each move could influence broader relationships, partnerships, and opportunities, balancing immediate objectives with sustainable growth. Public discourse continued to escalate as Chapter 7 unfolded. Social media became a battleground of opinion, with supporters celebrating the deal as a triumph of creativity and independence, while critics leveraged every aspect of the contract to challenge the Sussexes' motivations, competence, and strategic judgment. Hashtags, memes, and viral commentary amplified diverse viewpoints, making audience engagement a dynamic and unpredictable element of the chapter.